Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This week, we've got a guest called Stephen Furness. He's a broadcast and production manager who's worked worldwide. Welcome, Stephen.
Hello. Nice to join you all.
Okay, no problem. Well, the first thing to do is really start about where you started off in the industry and, what did you do to get in?
It all started off, quite a long time ago now, over 30 years ago, which started bizarrely in a market, in an indoor market, where a radio station was doing a promotion. And basically I said, I would like to come and work for you. And it sort of barreled on from there. That's a very quick version. So I worked for Metro Radio Group, who still exist as a name, a part of a much larger radio group now. I used to do roadshow events for them, which is a mixture of operations and a little bit of engineering, a bit of presenting as well. So a real mixed bag. Before that, I'd done a little bit of hospital radio, so like a lot of people, I'd done a bit of voluntary work. And I went on from that to start doing a little bit of training in the Northeast for some of the media companies there. And I was lucky enough to see a job for trainee studio manager or audio engineer in non-BBC parlance. So I applied in 1990, which seems a very long time ago, and was successful. To give you some idea of the competition in those days, of the amount of applications, there were 3,000. Of the amount of people taking on, less than 20.
Wow.
So really tough.
Stiff competition.
Very much so. In my interview board, I remember distinctly, it's an operator's job, not an engineer's job, that one of the people on the panel took a microphone apart in front of me and asked me to describe everything that was on it.
Right, okay. Which
is actually beyond what you would normally ask operators to do, but obviously they're really looking for what they could get. So that's I started there. I went on the BBC's sort of apprentice scheme, if you like, and spent time at Wood Norton, an excellent training centre where I was taught by really the best people that I could possibly be taught by. A lot of stuff, a lot of audio engineering and operations. Because obviously World Service at the time, when I started, was going through a bit of a transitional phase of moving away from shortwave broadcasting. So I had a lot of mono studios and things like that, Valve and things like that, which I've worked on, so I have done all the transition between Valve, transistor, and now onto digital desks. I'm one of the last of that generation who can say they've done that. So we started learning that, and obviously it was split into 3 courses. There was an A and a B course and a Q course. Q course being a qualifying course, which said you were a fully qualified sound engineer, which I passed. So that was sort of the early days of my journey. So it's all started off in Jackie White's Market in Sunderland, the most unlikely place to do any broadcast recruitment.
Yeah. No, I mean, everyone's got to start somewhere, right? And I guess, did you have any calling signs, or was there any things that you noticed and sort of some sort of flag that you're like, yeah, this is the stuff I want to get into, this is my thing? Is there anything that springs to mind that really caught your imagination? Or
yes, I mean, I had obviously tried to get myself involved with the broadcast community in the Northeast, which is quite small. It's even smaller now, in fact. So I did go to some Royal Television Society events and things like that, which I found quite interesting. And so a little bit behind the scenes of what's BBC Look North, which still exists, and a bit of the Tyne Tees operation, which at the time was quite substantial, but now it's got very small. And that really fired me up, and I thought, I want to do this,
Yeah, because similar to me, I wanted to know how it works in the background. You can see what's happening on television, but in the back of your mind, you're like, how does this actually work in the background? And it's something that's, probably rings true throughout your career. And how's your skill set changed over the years, Steve? You started in sound, but you've gone through fiber signals into production management.
Dramatically, yeah. And so looking at my BBC career, and I'll talk about the other aspects that I do in just a sec. So I moved from that into obviously up the sound engineer scale into senior studio manager and things like that. So capable of handling drama, stereo, music, all those sorts of things. And I'd had a conversation with a journalist in Bar Italia in Soho, who was a Sky News journalist. And I ended up going to see Sky and talk about doing some possible freelance work. Because I realised that with the World Service Radio, I was going to be very limited, that I only had the skills that applied there, and they wouldn't really apply outside there, and that's a very dangerous thing to have. You know, I mean, lovely, but of course, if that stops, you're finished. You know, so I'd been up to see them, and they said, "Yeah, very nice, but we haven't really got anything for you." Okay, well, I've been, you know, so I gave it a try, and then I did a couple of other bits and bobs. I did a couple of freelance shifts for LBC Radio and for Classic FM. So just basically some, if you like, very, very limited things doing classic concerts and stuff like that, just play at work, really. And then about a year later, I got a call from Sky asking the reverse of me. So basically, because they were going to make it redundant, could someone come and see me about working at the BBC? So effectively, I did the reverse for them. And Jack came in and decided not what he wanted to do. He really wanted to work in a dubbing theatre, which we didn't have. But Sky are really grateful for that. And the head of sound at the time, a few months later, rang me up and said, "You know, you said you wanted to freelance for us." I said, "Yeah, do you still want to?" And I went, "Yeah, of course I do." So I went to see them, and the progression in those days was with Sky News. Sky News is done with 2 sound operators, so it's like a main mix and a assistant, and you swap places. Great place to learn, because there's lots of things in Sky News in those days was very ambitious and was very unplanned as well. I think that's fair to say. I don't think they would object to me telling people that. So, you know, you'd be doing a show and the presenter would say, "After the break, the Drift is live in the studio," which you would know nothing about. So you had 3 minutes to set stuff up and that stuff like that. I mean, real seat of the pants, you know, TV, but great learning ground. And I also ended up with another outfit, Arabic outfit, which I'll talk about in a second as well. Meanwhile, at the BBC, we were going through quite a lot of changes as well. So I'd spent a lot of time on the road in Eastern Europe. I still have a lot of friends there and do things, and building studios, and things, real project management skills, as well as a bit of engineering, a bit of operations, a bit of training. So I built studios in Bucharest, in Romania, in Chisinau, Moldova. I did stuff in Zagreb. I did stuff in Albania as well, and a few other countries. So, I mean, real, you know, here's the gear, off you go, you know. By the way, there'll be no one to help you, you know. Try not to get arrested, try not to do all those sorts of things, you know. And there are a few close shaves, which I won't go into here, but it's certainly character forming, put it that way. So all of that was going on as well. So I was really had quite a busy time. But it was all good and educational, and I was moving a bit more towards things, because I was also expanding my television knowledge. So as time went on, a Middle East company called NBC, used to be based at Battersea here in London. I got in touch with them, and I started freelancing for them, and we did some amazing shows for them, mainly as a sound engineer, but we did live music, we did live phone-ins. We did a program which BBC Resources wouldn't do because they thought it was too hard, but worked on that for 7 years. So I'm pleased to say, you know, so we did lots of things like that. So I was really gaining. And one of the guys who worked there decided to go freelance as an engineer. Very good guy. He's also called Steve. Seems to be a trait. And he went to work for a company called Feltec, who no longer exists now. And they were doing a lot of what's called host broadcasting, which is a very odd thing, which basically is all the big government events like G8s and G20s and things like that. And he phoned me up and he said, "Do you want to come and spend a week doing that?" And I thought, "Oh yeah, you know, it's something really different." It's a very odd thing. Is that you're broadcasting, but you're not exactly broadcasting, but you're providing all that information to people who are broadcasters, so Sky and NBC, ABC in the States, so some real big players. So you've really got to know your stuff and know it quickly as well. It's pretty much, you know, now, and of course anything can happen. And indeed, the first one I worked on was the G8, which obviously, given there was a bombing in London at the time, as you can imagine, that was pretty full on for everyone. You know, press conference appeared out of literally nowhere on the front of the Gleneagle steps, which I will tell you was still not wired for broadcast, you know. So things like that. So I was building up all this TV experience, which was great. And also I was starting to get involved with the vision side more as well, because obviously doing events like that, it's all hands to the pump. You know, you can't sit there and go, "Oh, I need to do audio, terribly sorry," you know. So here's a video cable, get the video work. So, but it was all just good skills building and things like that. So in my World Service hat, they decided that they wanted to produce something called Production House of the Future. which is basically blue skies, how we're going to do radio in the future, which was really very forward thinking and extremely stressful, if I'm quite honest. So you would find that it was completely, sort of blue skies approached everything. So we're using new forms of glass for the acoustics. We're making it so studios could transfer control. Something that's very common now, but wasn't at the time. We had IP telephony, which again was very new and very frustrating at the time as well. So we're really blending all those things together, and we started doing more video things there as well. So I worked on that for about 4 months. It was exhausting, but good project stuff, but really, really hard work. But still, a lot of the stuff is still in operation now. So some of the stuff at Broadcasting House, where I now work, actually has the same stuff that we developed in our Bush House days. So I'm quite proud of that. I went back to operations for about 2 weeks, and then management decided that they wanted to build a video studio. And I said, I could give a hand with that. I know a bit about that. And I ended up being one of the project managers on it myself, and another person who was seconded from BBC News. So we built a 3-camera studio with an editing platform based around Macs for World Service, which we built at a low budget, obviously, but still broadcast standard. We were able to get everything together for them, and that worked for quite a bit of time. And in fact, some of the equipment is still in use by BBC Arabic in some of their facilities now. So it's had another life. So built that, went on back to operations. While I was back in operations for just a couple of weeks, the tsunami hit, which is very substantial to do, and we, without going into all the details, because some of it's quite sensitive, we ended up having to manage a lot of stuff ourselves, including extending broadcasts, internet services, this, that, and the other. And the operations team really worked their heart out and did a phenomenal job, recognised by the Foreign Office as probably saving lives and one of the best examples of soft power they've ever had. So I mean, we were exhausted by the end of it, completely wrecked. And what had happened before that, a little bit of conjecture, the BBC had duty managers at Bush House and decided to get rid of them as a cost saving. So of course, I realised after that we probably need them. So of course, there was a recruitment drive, and myself and another colleague who's sadly no longer with us were the first to be recruited, because obviously what we'd done was clear that we knew how to do the job. So we spent our time in the master control room at Bush House. So we ran basically the operational output along with another third-party contractor who was still in very close touch with all those people, and did a fantastic job and really massively improved World Services output from a commercial and from a technical point of view as well. And and as part of that, they asked me if I'd spend a little bit of time in the Middle East before they launched BBC Arabic TV, looking at facilities out in Lebanon, Jordan, and Syria.
Right.
An exciting week. We did a whole lot in a week. I mean, lots of scurrying about through borders and things like that. And I'm extremely grateful to all my colleagues out there. It was very educational in lots of ways. So then I came back and we launched Arabic TV. I had to do a little bit of extra work with our video area on what was on the 7th floor of Bush House. We're no longer in Bush House, so I can talk about where locations are. And so to make it as a standby facility for Arabic television if they had a problem in their facilities at Broadcasting House. So I spent a few years as a duty manager working at Bush House, and then we amalgamated the 3 teams into one team in Broadcasting House. So that's the Operations Management Television Centre and what were the Broadcasting House duty managers who looked after domestic radio. So we're now all one homogenous team, basically.
Just talking about those early freelance gigs then, Steve, was it, do you think, by just perseverance, bravery, your connections, by luck? What was it that did it to get, secure those first freelance roles?
A little bit of luck, to be honest, with some of the stuff. Like the Sky News one was just, I happened to be drinking coffee with someone, and the owner of the coffee bar said, "Oh, he works in broadcast as well. I was at the right place at the right time." However, I mean, I was pursuing, I was trying to get in touch with people and doing things and making phone calls and things like that. So I had set out specifically to try and broaden my skills base, which at the time was more difficult than it is now. You have to remember this is early days of the internet and things like that. There's no online courses. People didn't have a website because it really cost money. I mean, I can remember that I didn't even have a BBC email address because BBC didn't want all the staff to have an email address because it cost. True.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess wearing these many hats as you've done throughout your career, do you sort of just move on to your next ideal role? Is that how you've sort of played it out over these years, Steve?
Yes, to a certain extent. Yeah, I mean, I have had some end goals in mind. So, for example, with the fibre stuff, I knew I had to get across that. So that sort of brings me on to another phase, if you like. And that another friend of mine, again, who I'd worked with on the G8 thing, took me for a drink in a pub around the corner and said, "I've got this job in Germany. It's your sort of thing." You know, it could mean anything. And the next thing I knew, I was on a plane to Cologne to work for League of Legends. Which is the Riot Games esports event. We were very early video IP people on that, so much so that I had to explain to fibre companies what we were doing. He says, "Oh, so what? So you're going to connect the cameras and the audio, yeah, and you're going to convert them to IP, and then you're going to zip it over to Los Angeles, and they're going to control it from there." Yes, really? There's lots of conversations like that, and when we took it on the road, even bizarrely in countries like Sweden, which you would think are extremely technically competent places, even they had to be explained to again and again. Great times, really, really challenging times. And so effectively on that, I was like broadcast and fibre manager initially on those events. We did loads in a studio in Cologne. We moved the studio up to Berlin. And then we took it on the road all around Europe. So we did other countries in France, Germany, we did here in the UK, did Wembley Arena here. So we were really pleased with that. And we also did the Asia tour as well, where we went to Taiwan, went to Korea and things like that. So again, all great stuff, you know, so really, really, you know. So we worked for them for a couple of years. And as these things tend to happen, people move on and things change. They decided they want to take some of the stuff in-house, which they did, and decided to go with another production management company, which they've had several since. So obviously that's not really working out for them, but that's another story in itself. But in the meantime, we'd already built ourselves a reputation as a team, you know, the American company, this is who I do some freelance work for. And we got approached by PUBG, Players Unknown Battleground, for those of you who don't do esports, who asked us to do a big show in Germany. And my boss, my American boss, phoned me up and said, "Do you want to be production manager?" And I was like, I had a bit of a think. So I thought, this is a lot. I mean, this is not a simple show. This is not, you know, some church hall or something. This is going to be watched. And also there's all the other things as well. Teams you don't know, bringing a lot of teams together to bring stuff new, not necessarily will communicate well with each other, sort out the egos, make sure it actually happens on time, because renting a big arena, and I can assure you that the arena we use in Berlin, Mercedes-Benz, is huge and expensive. You know, so obviously every minute counts. You know, even things like, you know, trying to get trucks out before midnight makes a big difference, because there are huge costs to over really substantial costs. You know, and I did have a bit of a think. I thought, well, if I don't do it, I'll regret it. If I do it, I'll probably still regret it. But it was a fantastic experience. I mean, luckily, I have some good friends. I have a good friend in the States who is a very experienced production manager who I've worked with on a good few gigs in the past. And I phoned him up and I said, "I'm a bit nervous." He said, "You should be." But it all worked. I mean, it was super tough. I'll be quite honest. I mean, every day was massively long. Every day started at 6 a.m. and went on to about 2 to 3 a.m. just constantly for about 2 weeks. And by the time I came back to the UK, I was totally exhausted. But it was a great show. I mean, to put in perspective, with 65 million concurrent views, there's actually a vast audience. We did it all in 4K, which again, I think we were one of the few people who've done stuff all in 4K at that stage. In fact, we struggled to get the amount of video circuits back because the arena at that time didn't have any more capacity. You know, they just simply didn't have the fibre ring. You know,
that sounds like a great sort of moment in your career, like a a moment of euphoria, you know, one of your standout moments. It's in 4K, one of the first.
Yeah.
Is there any other sort of highlights like that stick out for you, Steve?
Some of them sound a bit strange, but so the G8 is my first big government conference to work on. A program called Dialogue with the West, the one I mentioned that BBC Resources didn't want to do, which we worked on for. So we're very proud of that because we had all sorts of major league guests. So, you know, we even had Saddam Hussein as a guest. You know,
Oh, wow.
with a phone in. But not just a phone in. So you've got a presenter and guests in London, plus another presenter and guests in Washington, translation in all directions, plus the phone in element, and all tightly formatted to time. Tough show.
Yeah, that sounds niche.
It was. I mean, brilliant stuff, and no one's even attempted it since, which shows just how hard it really is, you know.
Yeah.
Luckily, of course, we had a very generous financial sponsor, shall we say. I don't think a lot of people would do that now. So that was a big highlight for me. But actually, the other highlight is going to sound strange to people. First show I did for the BBC, which I can tell you was in Studio C22, a Valve desk with rotary faders for the Swahili service on an afternoon.
Yeah.
And that for me and it's just as important to me as the big shows and things like that, because it was the start for me of my big broadcast career. I miss my Metro FM days with the road show, if I'm quite honest, you know, but I'm a bit too old for it now.
No, that's fair enough. And I probably just want to ask you about is there any academic background to you, Steve, or is it professional certifications, or is it you learn the tools of your trade and that's
primarily
it?
professional certifications. I mean, I joined it at a time when the BBC sort of university, if you like, and it is like university, I promise you, you know, it was tough, and people have Totsi and Tetsi, and if you're BBC, you'll know exactly what I'm referring to. You know, these things were tough, and if people didn't make the grade, they were got rid of. You know, and several people, and I'm sure you'll speak to other people who are either current BBC or ex-BBC background, will tell you stories of people who just didn't make the grade, and they just would let go. You know, so they have been. It's tougher than people think. So yeah, I'm lucky in that respect. In terms of the academic things, what I would say to people though is I've kept learning. I've kept learning, and you've seen as you were talking about earlier with me. I've continued to do courses and learn, and that I think that's really important because it's extremely risky, especially if you work for a big outfit like I do. It's very easy to get stuck in a little rut, and that's dangerous because if the business changes, and you've seen how rapidly it's changed with this pandemic, you know, suddenly you are stuck. You are completely stuck. With a set of skills that may not be transferable, and that is a big risk.
Yeah, because you know, the audience is not necessarily everyone just leaving a sort of broadcast media course. It could be newcomers who want to learn some sort of technical skills and get into the industry off their own back, off their own steam, essentially. So you're proof in the pudding, which is good.
That's good. That's good to hear. I mean, I think it's important that before anyone embarks on this as a business, you know, they need to understand what it's about. And I would say people who have the opportunity to do any work experience, and that includes more mature people as well, I have to say, who shouldn't feel that they shouldn't apply for it. They absolutely should, because I think it's a bit of a misnomer. People go, oh yeah, work experience, you know, but actually it's valuable at any age group. I mean, one of the things I also do, which is not broadcast at all, which I've been doing just this very morning, in fact, is something I did to learn some more digital skills from the back end, to do with apps and things like that. Which is just for me personally, you know, just because I wanted to know a bit more. And people said, well, why would you do that? And I said, well, how can I deal with people who were developers and things like that? And as we move into a more cloud-based solution for a lot of things, if you don't understand their world, you know, can I have a conversation with them? They know you don't understand, so you're at a loss from the very beginning, you know.
And you know, what makes you happy comes from within, I guess, you know. And so I'd probably ask you, what defines success for you, Steve, in terms of your career, or what makes you, you know, happy in general?
I think that, like a lot of people, I've achieved at my level anyway. I've achieved the vast majority of things that I want to do.
Yeah.
So I'm fairly content now, if I'm
Yeah.
really frank about it. I'd still like to do some more shows, which I think we will do. I have some other interesting things for the future, which are, of course, they're commercially sensitive, so I can't disclose them just now, but tune in for another episode and you might find them.
Okay.
Good trailer, yeah. So that for me has been great. I think as well, the other thing that's been good, not for me, but for all the more junior staff I've had when I've been a manager and things like that, and lots of them have blossomed into other roles, and I'm super proud of that.
Yeah.
It's one of the great legacy things, and I always think it's all about the legacy. When you leave something, what have you left behind? And if people can say, oh, well, you know, he did X, he did Y, and this, that, or, but for me, it's, you know, I mean, lots of people have broadcast credits, and I've got loads of broadcast credits as well, but it's also about all those people, and some of them are in industries which are not broadcast anymore, but they're all successful, which is great. I mean, I'm delighted that I played maybe just a very small part in helping them along the way, but that's fantastic. I mean, that it really is good, you know.
Yeah. And just, I guess, looking back, if you could turn back the clock, Steve, if you could meet your sort of 20-year-old self now, what would you tell yourself?
I'd say, go get it. Go get it. Don't be shy about it. Apply for everything you can. You know, look for the opportunities and make your own luck. It's so important, and anyone who's watching should think about that. What I've just said. What I would say, as on a more general level, is that you must understand the business you're getting into. That's other reasons for doing stuff like I say, experience. It's not just the work element; it's the sort of rationale and everything behind it. You know, so you know, I think there's a lot of people who have a sort of mystical view of what we do and think it's all glamour. But I can assure you, stood in the back end of a broadcast compound when it's raining at 10 o'clock at night is not sexy.
Yeah, definitely not. Doesn't sound it.
It's not. So I think there's a lot of value there for people understanding what it is they want to do. I think the opportunities are differing for people now. People won't necessarily have to come to London anymore to achieve certain things. That's a big plus for a lot of people who are not based in a capital city or maybe can't manage to move here for whatever reason. I think that's a great leveler, and that's good news for the business in many ways. It will mean a lot of changes. I'll have to get a decent background for here for a start. I mean, you know, this is not one of the Zoom cutouts, I promise you. You know, I think that's going to be a big thing, that you're going to see a substantial change in how production is made, and but also it will open up a lot of opportunities for people that they wouldn't have existed previously.
Yeah. And I guess looking forwards, then you said you're quite content. You maybe want to do a few more shows, but is there going to be more focus on operations as you've done in like recent times, or your freelance work? Or
you know, it's really interesting. I mean, the BBC is obviously going through massive change at the moment. I can't really comment on that currently because there's obviously a lot going on and people's lives are quite affected by it. I have a feeling at some stage I'll become fully freelance, and there's certainly projects and things in the pipeline which could be quite interesting. But I do still go back to the old days. Just before Christmas, I got contacted by a company who said, "Will you do some audio engineering remotely?"
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, why not? You know, something quite straightforward. So I went back to do something which I haven't done for about 15 years.
Yeah.
And the only difference is now I'm using a computer rather than using a physical mixing desk and things like that. And I absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed it. You know, and I thought, oh, great, it's fun, this, you know.
Yeah.
And I can get to do it from home, which I never could before, you know. You know, so if you want to have a mug of tea and comfy slippers on, you can't do that in the average studio. You know?
Yeah, no, I don't think you'll ever be out of work, Steve. You've got a fantastic career that's you've just explained to us. And I'd just like to say thanks for coming on the show. Actually, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, and all the best for the future.
Thank you very much, and a pleasure talking to you, and a pleasure with all your viewers and listeners as well. I hope I've been of some use to them.
All right. Take care, Steve.
Thank you.